Alright, so the final conference of E3, the Nintendo, technically it's the digital event by Nintendo. These are my top 5 moments from their digital event slash press conference. Before I get to the actual countdown, I just want to point out that I loved what they did this year. I thought it was really funny with having like Seth Green and the Robot Chicken people come in for those little random bits with the Nintendo characters. I thought it was a great digital event or press conference. I'm just gonna call it that because why not? I thought it was great. I thought it was much better than what they did before with like the Nintendo Direct stuff, which felt very flat. It was just like being in a boardroom press conference or something where you just have like a board meeting. That's what it kind of felt like before when they do and it still feels like when they still do the Nintendo Direct things, but this was really good. I thought it was really cool. It was definitely well done. I'd say I still enjoyed the Sony one more just because they had more stuff, but this was also much shorter. They just showed what they had. They showed off pretty much all new games that either haven't been announced or stuff that has been announced, but we still just haven't really seen a lot. And they showed us new stuff on those games. So I thought it was unbelievably well done. Thought it was really cool. Got new games. Mostly it was new IPs, or well, I can't really say new IPs, but new games for some of their intellectual properties, which is to be expected. They tend to make games for their characters over and over again, but this year we got to see other characters get into the market, so that was really cool. But my top five, I was gonna do top 10, but then a lot of stuff I wasn't incredibly excited for. I thought it was cool, and I had 10 things, and it was just like, I don't really care about any of this stuff, so it was an honor. I have like quite a few honorable mentions because as cool as they are, and I appreciate them, I know I'm not gonna really be that interested in these games, or I know I'm never gonna buy these games, despite the fact that I like how they look or I like what was shown off. So top five, but I think I actually have like 6 honorable mentions because I decided to just cut it down and not try to figure out where do I place these things that ultimately just don't really matter to me. How do I place them in an actual ranking? So quite a few honorable mentions, but I'm gonna start off with number five, and number five is actually the new Zelda game, and I chose to split up the two different games because that was really the only way I could get 5 games that I actually cared about because everything else was just meh. So I decided to actually split them up into what I anticipated more. So we have 2 Zelda games. The first one that was shown was the brand new one, which is like going to be the real big deal Zelda game because it's the next one. It's the new Legend of Zelda. It looks unbelievably amazing. Like I love the art style for it. It comes right off of the Skyward Sword art style, so it's like that, but it's more advanced, and you can tell it's sort of a blend between that as well as Wind Waker, but it's um, I guess fully grown Link is the best way to describe it. So it's sort of a mix between those two, and it looks really well done. I love the little trailer they showed. I was glad to see that it was an actual video because I thought they were just gonna give us like the little background of him staring off at the mountains and stuff. But I love what they explained about it. How they have this real open world, and it's not like Wind Waker where it's a big open world, but you have to go to each island through a certain point. Like you can't just do what you want. And now they have the tech to make an open world uh, Legend of Zelda game, which I thought they did with Twilight Princess, but I guess I was wrong. I haven't played it, but just based off of how that one always looked, excuse me, I always thought that one was fairly open world. But they say this one is true open world. They had the mountains in the background, and they said you can even go to those if you want to travel there. So I'm excited for that game. I most likely won't actually end up getting it because I just never bought a Zelda game before. Like I have the original one, and technically I still have to beat that and before I feel comfortable enough to even go to the other ones because I have OCD a little. But I feel like I need to start at the basics and just enjoy that before I get into just skipping around. Even though technically I can jump in wherever because they're all over the place as far as timelines, but the game looks amazing. I love the ending that where they showed Link, and I love him in the blue. Looks really cool. When he took off the hood he had, the arrow that he shot looked really cool. Where they did it in the slow motion, and it bent out, and then it was almost like a little force arrow tip type thing that went into the monster and destroyed it. It just looks cool. It looks really well done. You get to ride your horse all over the place. You go where you want. It's really interesting, and I'm curious as to what they're gonna call it, because I'm sure it won't just be Legend of Zelda. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have some subtitle with it somewhere down the line, but it definitely looks absolutely amazing. I love the art style for it, and I can't wait to see what else they do with it. It does look very interesting. Like I said, I love how he looks. It's nothing like what they initially had. I believe it was when the Wii U first came out. They had that really CG type of Link, and he was fighting the giant spider. It looks nothing like that, and I'm okay with that. I think it looks really well done. So I'm excited for that, even though I probably won't ever get it. It does look amazing. I am excited to see what they do with that one, and it'll be cool to see this open world, and it might get me to buy it because Twilight Princess, with the way that one was, I really wanted that game. Even though I hadn't ever played Zelda, that one just looked unbelievable. Aside from the fact that the graphics had really upgraded, and that was one of the big things, was it looked just so cool compared to all the other Zelda games. It had a darker tone. It was the open world style where you just, I mean, technically it was kind of the same as all the other ones where you do ride your horse, but it just felt different, like in just the way it looked. So this one seems like it's gonna harken back to that a little bit with Link running from this giant creature when he was on his horse, but we'll have to wait and see. But for what we got now, I thought it looked really cool, and I'm excited for what they do with it. And then number 4 is the other Zelda game that we got, which is Hyrule Warriors, which it was interesting to me. It actually had me more excited, I guess, because I actually got to see more. So that could be a real big factor as to why the new, real, so to speak, Zelda game is number 5, and then just the action beat 'em up one is number 4. So if you're mad at me, that's really the only thing. We got to see action from it, and also I actually like that more because I like just hack and slash beat 'em up games. It had me a little more interested. It was just it was kind of like taking Link and Zelda out of Smash Brothers, but you still get to just fight and use all their cool abilities and just fight a bunch of cool enemies, and that's what it was like. It's sort of a Legend of Zelda army style game, and then they talked about how it was a fuse between the Legend of Zelda and Dynasty Warriors, which I used to love Dynasty Warriors because you can't deny the fact that when those games first came out and they weren't like a billion a billion of them out there, those games were fun. They were just cool. The moves were cool. You just beat up a bunch of people. You fight a boss. You have cool abilities. You go through this really giant map. You help other lieutenants that are off in different locations and stuff. And that's what it's like in this game. And it looks really cool. You get to play as Link. You get to play as Zelda. There are other characters, which of course I can't think of their names. They said them. I think one was Impa or something like that. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But it definitely looked cool. It was interesting to see all the powers. I'm curious to see what they do with these powers exactly, as far as how many abilities can you unlock, what moves are they going to bring over from the history of the Legend of Zelda. There are so many games that they could come from. There's going to be typical things, of course, but what special moves are they going to have? Are they going to have stuff from Skyward Sword where like you can like bring the bird in or something like that, or Zelda? I'm sure Zelda turning into Sheik, that's actually fairly obvious. They have to kind of put that one in there. It would be stupid not to, but it's cool to have multiple characters in there. It's gonna be something worth playing, I think, personally, but it looked really cool. It was a nice little action game, and I enjoyed it for what we got to see. The graphics are interesting. Honestly, it looks more like it would be on the 3DS, because it looked a lot like the Smash Brothers on the 3DS to me, but at the same time, it still has much better graphics. I'm trying to find it now so I can actually look at it. Yeah, but Hyrule Warriors, it looks good. It's definitely huge open battlefields. They have the enemies, they have all the cool little grapple attacks. You get to play as different characters you never got to play as from the universe, so that's pretty cool. And I think, personally, it looks really nice. It'll be a cool sort of hack and slash Legend of Zelda game, and I'm curious to see what they do with the story, because as much as Dynasty Warrior is just a giant hack and slash, it has a story where these generals are going through so they can win this war, and what are Zelda and Link and his people going to be doing. So definitely excited to see that, and it comes out September 26th of this year, so that was pretty interesting to see too. It's first time they announced it. It's first I've heard of it at least, and it's gonna be here really soon. So that was definitely a nice piece of the press conference. And then number three is without a doubt one of my favorites. It was really hard to put this at number three, but Bayonetta 2 is, I'm just excited for that. And I think the reason it's only number three for me is because of the fact that we didn't get much out of it at this conference. I know what the game's going to be about. I know a little bit of the story. We got a tiny bit more, like they go to hell in the game. So that's pretty cool, but we didn't get much. We saw a couple weapons. We got to see one of the weapons, which goes from a flamethrower to an ice weapon, which is pretty cool. And uh, it's I can't think of the right word, but it's similar to a weapon that they had in the first game, which were like these sort of claw weapons, and one side of it was fire, but excuse me, if you did a spin, it would turn and it would become an electrical attack. So it's cool that they kept that element from it. I hope they kept that weapon, because that was actually my favorite weapon to use, because it was really close up. But it's cool to see that they kept that elemental thing where you can go from fire and switch, and then it goes to ice, and it actually froze the enemy, which was nice. So they have that. I saw some gameplay before where she was using a bow and arrow, so that's a cool new weapon. In this one, she also had a scythe, which was pretty interesting. She did more transformations. I saw the wing thing again where she was fighting, it was some boss, which actually looked like one of her transformations from the first game. So those little clips there really do get me interested as to what else is happening in the game as far as the story. But I feel like they're not going to give us that until we just get the game, which I'm fine with, because they don't want to spoil stuff, and the game could, I guess the game has a really good story. They don't want to give anything away, because it does look like she's fighting her own creations from the first game, and if that is the case, they wouldn't want to say that. They'd kind of just leave us guessing as fans. So definitely excited to play it. It was also a great surprise to see that the first game is going to come with the second game. That just makes it an unbelievably good deal, because if you didn't experience the first game, now you can buy the second game and get the first game with it, and you can just play through, and you'll be able to get the story from the very beginning, and then see how it improves through the second game. And for people like me who love Bayonetta because they got it when it first came out and just played through it a bunch of times like I did, it's still worth getting, because obviously you don't have to pay for it yourself. You're paying for the second game more than anything. You just happen to get the first game, and it's worth playing through again, because you get to have all the Nintendo costumes in there, and it actually changes certain things around. So that was cool. It's like little things here and there, but it's worth it. It's the type of thing where it's like, well, if I already beat the game, and that's why I'm excited. Like most people probably are. People who want the second game probably love the first game, because it's like the spiritual successor to the, I guess, original Devil May Cry series. So it's sort of the successor to that, and it's like, this game is amazing. It's crazy over the top action. Play through it. It's just silly and ridiculous and cool moves. Now they have the second one coming out, and you get to play the first one on the Wii U. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes as well, because it'll be just like the second one where you use the gamepad in certain cases, and it'll probably change some of the stuff from the first one where you use button presses on your controller. It'll change and you like tap the screen or something like that. But you get the alternate costumes. They showed off 3. I'm sure there are more. I'd love to see some of the other ones and what they can do, but each one adds something from the franchise that you're dressed as. So you get the one as Peach, and all of Bayonetta's moves actually become Bowser's body parts. I thought that was pretty silly and just cool. That's what the point is. It's just minor changes, aesthetic changes that just make it a little bit different, so you can go through, and it's not exactly the same thing. So I enjoyed that, where she did the cake and Bowser's leg came out. I would assume if she did a punch, it would be Bowser's fist. Who knows if the transformation is just like a giant Bowser comes out or something. But that was cool. Excuse me. That was cool when she was dressed like Link. It was really cool, and she destroyed stuff and all the rings, which were initially like Sonic because it was made by it was I believe developed or published by Sega or something like that. So they're initially rings like Sonic. So those changed into rupees from Legend of Zelda. I thought that was cool, and we didn't even get to see what happened with the Samus costume, although we got to see the mask come down, so it moves around during cutscenes, which is actually really cool. So I'm excited for that, and whatever other costumes we get, we might get. I feel like we'd have to get Mario somehow, even though we have Peach and then Bowser legs and stuff. I feel like she'd have to be dressed like Mario at some point just because it's Mario, but they could have Star Fox, they could have whoever they want, and I'm sure there are more than just the three costumes from Peach, Link, and Samus. So I'm excited to see that. Can't wait to play through the first game again on the Wii U and see the differences that come from all the separate costumes from the Nintendo universe. And of course, I can't wait to play the second game because that's going to be fun. And I'd love to see if those costumes are actually in the second game as well, which I feel like they'd have to be if they put them in the first game. Why not put them in the second game as well, which you can unlock in the second game once you beat it, or you can buy them or something like that. But Bayonetta 2, even though it's number 3 on my list, is actually the number 1 purchase that I'm gonna make. Like even before Smash Brothers, I would buy Bayonetta 2 because that's just the game I'm looking forward to the most. It's just that in this conference, we didn't really get to see much. We saw some moves, and honestly, if you play Bayonetta 1, it's like, oh, it looks just like the first Bayonetta game. But if I was actually playing it, I'd love it because it would be new moves and stuff. But all we saw were the same things you would see in the trailer from the first game, so it wasn't incredibly exciting. But the little extra stuff that Nintendo added as far as the costumes does make it more exciting to watch, and trying to figure out what's happening in the story and some of the characters, what's going to be happening there. But that's my number 3, although it's ironically my number 1 purchase is what I'm most excited for. And then number 2 is Smash Brothers. A lot of detail in this one. Right off the front, they added the Mii's. The Mii fighters were really cool. I love the brawler out of the three different fighting styles they had. I thought the brawler was the coolest, but the brawler, the gunner, and the sword fighter. And they talked about how you could basically have 4 sets of moves for each button, so in total they have 36 moves. I thought that was amazing. So it really does add to the depth of the separate Mii characters and what moves that they could possibly pull off, because they seemed like they did have a ton of moves when they were initially showing them before they explained it. But they seemed great. I mean, the facial style doesn't really matter. It's really just the fact that you have a unique fighter that you can make your own, and you can make them look how you want. And more than that, they fight how you want them to fight. It would be amazing if you could mix and match certain things, but that would probably make it really hard to beat that character. But that was definitely really cool. We also got some new characters. Paulatina, I believe her name was, from Kid Icarus. That was really cool. Showed her different moves, and then at the end of that trailer, they kind of had Dark Pit come in, but they didn't really announce that he was in it. But she says, like, did you come just to crash my party? And he's just like, yeah, I did. And then it goes off. So I think Dark Pit as well as normal Pit are both going to be in it, and I don't know what the difference could possibly be, but it won't just be a skin for Pit now where he has dark wings. It'll actually be Pit and then Dark Pit. So if you know the actual difference between the two Pits and what Dark Pit can do that normal Pit can't, please put that below so I know what I can expect out of him as a fighter. But that was definitely cool to see. Very interesting stuff. I really enjoyed that. We got to see just all the moves from Paulatina, which was cool, which is what they do in all the trailers, but it was cool to see her. And I also loved the trailer that they did with it, where it was like the anime style. I always think that just looks really cool. It was well done, so I enjoyed that. And then, of course, before I get to my number 1, I have to do my honorable mentions. And my first honorable mention actually ties right into Smash Brothers, and that was the amiibo stuff. It just didn't really interest me at all. It was one of the big things that came along with Smash Brothers, but it just kind of tied into the Disney Infinity stuff, but it was less interesting. And the reason it was is because I mean, the way they did it was like you show off Mario coming in, and they explain it where it's really just you get the little figure. The figures themselves, I'm sure, look cool. I mean, for anyone nerdy like me, you buy random figures of video game characters anyway. So sure, they look cool, but at the same time, it's just like, why would I buy this Mario figure to put him in the game as a computer character and have data on this character that does? It just seems like it's absolutely useless, and I don't know what it would do for Mario Kart, but I feel like it would be the exact same thing. It's just you put Mario on the thing, it doesn't change anything. I thought it was maybe you have if you get the amiibo, they have different moves or something. They unlock different moves that you can use, or the computer will use different techniques that you can't use in the game or something, or it allows you to switch out. I don't know, but it seemed like it was really just like, hey, move your basically like any player stats in any fighting game. It was just like you can move that from this console to that console, and you can have your player stats fight each other and see which one is actually better based off of how you play with them sometimes. And it just seemed absolutely useless, but we'll have to see what they decide to come up with for that. But I think that was kind of admittedly, I think that would probably be the fail of this conference. I don't think there's any point to them doing that, but we'll see how it plays out. It might end up like the little heart monitor thing they had where you put it on your finger, because that just disappeared. But we'll have to wait and see. I just don't like it's an honorable mention simply because it was a big part of Smash Brothers, and the little figure looked cool for Mario, so people will probably buy them just to collect all of these cool little figures, because I'm sure they'll have cool poses just like Mario. He was actually shooting a fireball, and it looked well done. It was just small figure, so people will probably buy them just to have the figure, depending on the cost. But we'll have to wait and see, because those things are just tiny, and what do I need that for? Just to have some stats that it can go from console to console. But that's my first one that I guess it was more of a dishonorable mention because I didn't like it. But my second one is Xenoblade, and the reason that's only honorable for me is because I never got to play Xenoblade before. I never really got to experience much of the Wii outside of Smash Brothers. I have a couple of games on it, but I've never actually had my own Wii system, so I never really bought like, oh, this game is really good, or this port from this really classic game is good. So I never really played Xenoblade before, but I just know it's a really good game. And I have to assume this was the game that was initially just called X, but it was Xenoblade from the beginning. And it's Xenoblade Chronicles, so I don't know if that actually means it's going to be Xenoblade. I think there are two Xenoblade games, like that's how little I know, but with it being called Chronicles, it kind of makes it seem like it's going to be the first game's redone, I guess, and it might have a little extra content, but it looked cool, and that's all I can really say about it. It looked cool. It had very nice graphics. It had people talking. It was like listening to an anime that I want to watch in Japanese. That was honestly all there was to it for me. But Xenoblade is coming out, so there you go. The next one, Yoshi's Woolly World. That actually looked really great to me. It's just not on my list because, once again, I know I'll never buy that game. It just looks really cool, like the old Kirby Epic Yarn game did, but it looks way better than that. I loved how, first off, I really do like how it looked. I think it looks cooler than Kirby Epic Yarn because it looks like a complete Yoshi, so that looked cool. You could eat everything in every different color, just like the shells in Super Mario, and Yoshi would eat them. Excuse me. They all had different abilities, but they would just be in egg yarn form, and each different color had a different ability. So one would create a smoke trail that you could land on. The white cotton ball would be like a bouncy ball. The purple one did something else, and it was like a tunnel that went up at one point. I thought that looked really cool. They also had two players, and you could eat one, like one Yoshi could eat the other and spit them out and help them land somewhere else. I thought it looked really good. They had all the cool yarn animations, like Kirby when he does his little float run like he does in Smash Brothers when he's trying to go a little higher. his legs would just turn into yarn and just sort of spin. When he was trying to float, it would be a helicopter on his feet and stuff. It looked really, really cool, and I just like how it looked. It was a great announcement. I think the game's probably gonna do pretty well because Yoshi hasn't had his own in quite some time, and people like Yoshi. I mean, it looks like it's gonna be a pretty cool game. The next one is Captain Toad, which is a pretty interesting puzzle game. It reminds me of, I believe it was Fez, which was the cool indie game where it was like you have to turn it to actually solve the puzzles. It seems like it'll be a lot like that. So that was just a smart decision for them to have a cool puzzle game. It's also nice to see Toad technically have his own game. I just thought that was interesting. But they kind of have their Mario characters, but they don't have their Mario game. Although I guess technically they do, which is another one of my honorable mentions. But it was a cool concept to see that they were creating a puzzle game. So that was really interesting to see. And like I said, Toad has his own thing, so we'll have to see how that one plays out. And they might add DLC to that just to add more puzzles, and we'll see what the story is, if there really is one, which I'm sure there is because it's a Mario game, so there has to be some story there. But it looked like an interesting puzzle game set in the Mario universe. Has the Super Mario World's graphics, so it looks really good. And it's just Toad going through the different levels. You move it around, you solve the puzzles, you get to the top, and keep on going. So that one looked interesting to me as well. The new Pokemon games, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. They're just the new Pokemon game, so honorable mention. The new Kirby game, where Kirby, instead of yarn, he now looks like clay. That was interesting, and they have I guess in a way it was yarn, where you kind of lead him on a trail, and he was a rocket, he was a tank, I like the tank part, where he started off small, but he kept stacking up, and then he blew up the rock. I thought that was pretty cool. But he was a tank, he was a rocket, he was a submarine, and it seems like the whole game you can guide him, or maybe you have to, I'm not really sure. It seems like you partly control him, but at the same time, you really just use the yarn or the pathway to sort of guide him around. And it was really interesting. Like when he was the little ball and he was spinning really fast, you have to hurry up and catch him before he falls off a ledge or hits himself on an enemy, but he doesn't defeat the enemy, he just loses health. And you curve it up and he goes up to a different section and stuff. It looked really interesting, so I'm excited to see how that one plays out, because I'm sure that'll also have multiplayer in it. And I'd like to see how that plays out, where like one person's Kirby and then the other person's just doing this and messing up the player. But that one looked interesting. New Kirby, they're gonna do well with that because it's Kirby, and it's nice to see Kirby get yet another transformation. It seems like they've been doing a lot of cool stuff with Kirby. They had Epic Yarn, they had the one for 3DS, or no, not the one for 3DS, but they had the other one for Wii, where he looked normal, but he had the super transformations where he'd get like a giant sword and stuff. And I played that one time, and I thought that was amazing. I was like, this is actually way cooler than what I thought it was. So that was cool, and that was also 4 players, where all 4 people could have super transformations. And I believe Kirby Epic Yarn may have only been 2 players. I can't remember, but I'm sure this one will have multiplayer, and we'll see how that one plays out in the future as well. But that also looked interesting. And then my last honorable mention is the Mario game that, even though technically they said there wouldn't be one, this counts as one, and it's the Mario Maker, where you get to make your own Mario levels. So I don't know how much that's gonna cost. I don't know if it's gonna, like, I personally think it should just be super cheap, because it's not a game where it's like, oh, I beat the story mode, now I'm gonna go and just make random levels. All it is you make levels, and then other people play through them, and you play through them yourself. But it was really cool to see that it went from the original Super Mario Brothers to New Super Mario U, I believe it was. So that looked really cool. You could put whatever you want in it, make it look crazy. And of course they were silly and put blocks over the castle at the end. I thought that was really nice and just funny, but I'm curious to see how much that costs, because if it costs like the amount of a normal game, I feel like no one's gonna buy that, because as much as people like to have user created content and make their own things inside of their favorite games, unless there's a story that comes with the game, or you just have a ton of stuff, like if Little Big Planet came out and there was no story mode, people would still love that game because there's so much to put in it. And Super Little Big Planet didn't come out in 1986 on the Nintendo initially. So unless they add a lot more to that game, I feel like it has to be like $10. It has to be like on the store in the store only, because no one would spend $60 or $50 on that game, because it's just make levels and play other people's levels. And as much as other people's levels are probably going to be amazing, like I said, if there's no real story to it, it's just Mario again, side scrolling. Like if it was make your own levels and it was somehow the 3D version like Super Mario Worlds, and you could really make your own levels in 3D, that would be very different. And if they didn't show that in the trailer because it's not ready yet, and they show it later, then that completely changes it. But for now, it's still just side scrolling like Super Mario Brothers, or the updated version, New Super Mario Brothers U. So it has to be very cheap, possibly download only, but we'll definitely have to wait and see, because if that thing is normal price, I don't think it's gonna work out at all for them. But we'll have to wait and see. And now my number one from the Nintendo press conference this year was Splatoon. And the reason this one became my number one is because it really had me psyched up for this new game coming out. And the first thing I have to mention, just like with the Mario Maker stuff, if there's no story to it, it probably won't do well. And that was the first thing I was thinking, because they only talked about how it's 4v4, and that's really all they said. It's 4v4 multiplayer. It's online, so that's nice. But what really got me psyched was the fact that it had depth to it. It wasn't just, here's like 4 characters with paintball. That's how it seemed at first. And then it was like, okay, you win by painting your getting the most paint throughout the whole level. When I first heard that, I thought that's a cool concept, because it seems it's not just kill each other, it's whoever has the most paint around, that's who wins. That's interesting. Then they showed off more gameplay of it. You do, of course, kill the other players and they basically explode, and then your paint gets further. So that was cool. And also at the end, we got to see tons of other weapons. They had like a nuke go off at one point. They had mines. They had like it was almost like a paint tornado, which I would think would be similar or close to the shotgun of the game. But the coolest thing that really got me was when they talked about the characters transforming into the squid and how you can work with your partners, because the paint thing where you go through and you turn into a squid and you get really fast and you can go through and you hit a ramp and you turn back human and you jump really high when you do that. That's what really got me. I was like, that's cool. That's really unique. I've never seen that before. Multiplayer, it had me psyched. It was like it makes you really fast. If you get into another character's paint, you go really slow. So you get there, you're in your paint, then you jump up and shoot down so you don't get blocked. You and your partners can just go forward and all shoot in front of you, and it makes the path fast so you can jet across the stage. That was really cool. These are like concepts I'd never seen before. And the stuff where it's like you can look at the map and just touch one of your partners and you just launch into the sky and you land next to them to help. That is an amazing concept. Just like if you imagine that in some of your favorite multiplayer games, it would just enhance the experience so much. Also, depending on who you're playing with and playing against, you might never be one-on-one. You might just always see people flying down, and it'll just be crazy like that. But that game really had me psyched for the original concept of, it's not just get your paint here to win, which I thought was really cool, because it wasn't just get the most points from killing, it's get your paint everywhere. That was the first thing that got me. It was original, which I think we've had before, but I don't think we've ever had it in a 4v4 multiplayer thing. So I enjoyed that. Turning into the squid to go faster and having the sort of slow down in other people's paint, that was a cool concept. And jumping to your partners no matter where they are on the map was definitely one of my favorites. And then of course seeing all the other weapons. They had the mines, they had it when they showed that you could actually hide inside the paint. I assumed when they were first showing it that everyone could see you, but if you're in the paint, no one knows you're there. So I thought that was really cool too. and you can just pop up and shoot someone in the back. You can hide inside the paint, and they can probably see you if you're moving through it. But if you're not, you just in the paint. You're perfectly still. No one knows you're there. You just pop up. You got a target. So Splatoon definitely has me interested. I hope the game does well because, like I said, the initial concept of it just looked really, really great to me. I hope it has a story to it, or at least it has a lot to offer, like a ton of levels that we can go through. Because if it's just 4v4, just like the Mario thing, it might not be enough. Because that'll get repetitive. It has to have some sort of story, like even if it's the crappiest story. I don't know, but so far it's just 4v4. And once again, if it's really cheap, then it's fine if it's just 4v4, as long as they have enough levels and they actually do have enough weapons to show that they give a crap about supporting the game. But that's my number one. It surprised me to see that new game. A lot of the games surprised me because pretty much everything in this was brand new, but that one got me the most excited. 4v4, unique concepts in it, turned into the squid, and actually seeing it, because I think if I heard it explained, it would be like that. It sounds original, but actually seeing how fast-paced it was and just the silly concept that you have, like you can go up the walls if you shoot paint on the walls, and you could imagine you'd be sideways and you jump out of the wall, and just those types of concepts. And I'm sure they have areas where there are ceilings, so you could go upside down and you drop down on top of enemies, stuff like that. That's what has me so excited, like the possibilities of what you can do when you can go inside of the paint that you spread all over the level. So those are my top 5. Put your top 5 below. Thanks for watching this super long video if you did, and definitely check the description below so that you can go to my other top 5 videos, which are for EA, Microsoft, Ubisoft, and the one top 10 I did, which was for Sony, because they just had a ton of stuff I liked. So comment below in your top 5 or your top 10, and check out my other videos. And like I said, thanks for checking out this one.